Alright, here's some colors we're going to be using in the next few videos. If you need any help on coloring your icing and getting these nice fall colors, check out my videos and my playlists. I've got lots of info on there. And so we're going to start off with our pie crust color, so this orangey brown. So first off, I'm going to cut off the tiny little tip of the bag just to squeeze out all the air. I want my bag nice and flat. Now I'm going to try to push this icing right to the end of my bag. You don't need to do this. This is strictly so you guys can see really well where my tip is and how I'm going to cut the bag. So I want to get it nice and flat, and we're going to cut it on an angle. You want nice sharp scissors, and then we're going to cut it kind of off, centered and at an angle here. The reason we're doing this is we're trying to mimic a petal tip, and this will give us a really cool pie crust. So if you have a petal tip, you're more than welcome to use it. But if you don't worry, I got you. This trick will do just as good. So just grab a paper towel and play around with your icing. Go back and forth in the motion that we're going to be using. Get comfortable with the pressure and how the icing flows out. Turn your bag in different ways to see how you want the icing to come out. Notice if my kind of higher tip is down, then it doesn't come out as nicely. And oops, I have a little stretch mark in my bag and a little hole that came through, and now the icing is just coming out of that thing. So guess what? Gotta go rebag that icing. Sometimes it happens with thicker icing when you push too hard, and sometimes you get a bad batch of bags, or you just have a one-off that has a hole in it, which I think this was. So I've got it rebagged and we're back in action. So notice how the higher point of my cut is facing upwards. So we kind of want it facing upwards, not downwards toward the cookie, and that will give us that nice edge. So again, I take my big round cookie and I just go at it. It is thicker icing, so sometimes it has trouble kind of like sticking to the cookie right away. So if you need to kind of push it hard towards the cookie or more downwards when you start, you can do that. Sometimes if it doesn't work right away, just scrape it off and try again. Or worst case scenario, if it's really not sticking, rub a little bit of icing on there and then you can have it stick better to that. So notice it's always facing upwards, that higher cut. And I'm just going back and forth, and we've got a nice, lovely pie crust. Just going to fix the end a little bit with my scribe there just to kind of make it look like there's no separation. And with our same tip here, now I'm going to do some flat lines of the pie crust going across the top. So of course, this is not going to be an even line. There's going to be a thicker and a thinner part. But what I'm doing is holding my bag a little bit more straight up and down so that I'm not noticing as much. And I'm staying nice and close to the cookie. And I'm trying to make that hole that I had that is bigger and the one that is smaller kind of parallel to the pie. This way it gives me a nice flat line. Again, if you need a paper towel on the side to practice a few times to see how to get that flat line, go ahead, because there's nothing like feeling it in your hands. Always give it a few practice runs, on the side, and then you're ready to go on your actual cookie. Okay, so now to add our cherries in our pie. I've got my red thick outline icing, and so what I'm going to try to do is space out these little balls of icing because I don't want them to melt into each other. It's pretty thick icing, but it's still thin enough to be able to wiggle with my scribe and smooth because I don't want those little points. So I'm going to go in with each one and kind of wiggle it. That way it'll make them nice and smooth looking. But if I have two of these kind of balls of icing too close together and I start wiggling it, it's going to wiggle that other one beside it, and they're both going to kind of run into one big massive ball of icing. So this is kind of an easy way to make sure that they stay like this. So we're going to do them separately at first, and then I'm going to give it a little time to dry. So like if you're doing a set of these, you would do this for one and then move on to the next one and do them kind of spaced out. And let's say you have a dozen to do. By the time you come back to the first one, especially if you have a fan running on your cookies, then you can come back and fill them in with no problem. They'll be dry enough. They don't have to be fully dry, just enough that the icing is not going to melt together. Royal icing tends to be, kind of like attracted to each other almost. So if they're next to each other and you start jiggling one, it's going to kind of attract the other one and they're all just going to melt together. So that's what we do not want. And that's what we're trying to avoid by having them separate and then waiting for them to dry a little bit. and then go in with the second layer. Now that they've dried enough, I can go in and do my second layer of icing. And I'm just really doing the same thing here, trying to keep them as separate as possible. We might have to do this a few times, just until we fill up all the kind of cookie area that is bare. And notice I'm wiggling my bag kind of as I'm piping. And the reason I'm doing that is just so that it gets smoothed out as I'm piping. Saves me a little bit of scribe work at the end to smooth them out. And of course, if you want to make kind of a ball of icing in one spot, just hold your bag in the same place. Wiggle it a tiny bit in the tip if you want to smooth it out. But I'm not making trying to make a circular motion or anything too big. I just want it all in one spot. We're using mostly just thick icing here, so a lot of the steps you don't have to wait hours for it to dry in between or anything else. It's just super easy. You can almost do one step after another. So it's a quick cookie to make, no fiddling with multiple consistencies, and there you have it. You have your awesome cherry pie for Thanksgiving. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Stay tuned for a lot more, and we'll see you in the next one. And as always, happy baking!